My name is Harrison Williams. I'm the transportation coordinator. I basically make sure we handle all the runners who finish early or don't make it for whatever reason, medical or otherwise. Every year, runners stop at either first aid stations or hydration stations along the way. They can't make it fully back into Boston on their own power. So we have these sweet buses, about 30 buses that run the course in a couple different loops to get this job done. There's an amateur radio operator and an EMT on each bus. That's typically the configuration that we see. The amateur radio operator there, the job they do depends on the bus that they're in. We have three main types: elite, loop or sweep, and express. Elite buses are basically point-to-point pickup for elite runners that can't make it to Boston. They're sort of their own nice van that they go right to the person where they are, take them directly into Boston, no lines, no waiting. The other is the loop and the sweep bus. These are the most common type of bus. We have 4 loops running on various sides of the course, operating through a number of different stops to pick up runners as they finish there. They will collect runners from those medical tents and bring them to the express bus, which are 4 stationary. In the past, we've done school buses. I think there'll be school buses again this year. They're larger buses that will periodically run into Boston to shuttle the last leg there. Each bus has GPS tracking, so we'll be able to keep an eye on approximately where you are, but we will rely on amateur radio to provide a heads up and an ETA to every medical station and to make sure that we're getting all the runners from all the various tents. So command and control, Brad Schuler and Cindy Frayne, they're the transaction leaders. They are in command from their aspect. Transaction is the company that owns the buses and operates the buses. 2016 was really great. We had a new setup for our communications pod and net control. We had a very good interaction with Brad and Cindy. They were very happy with the service that we were able to provide. We're going to look to basically continue the dependability that we did last year. Few tips. Don't go rogue. Please don't make ad hoc decisions. There have been cases where the amateur radio operator will tell the bus operator to go somewhere or do something, and that's not necessarily the right decision to make. We will be working with the transaction leaders to make sure that the buses are getting to where they need to go on time and as appropriate. Replacing the transaction representatives with the transportation net again, this helps them feel included in the role, in command. No one's really taking away their responsibilities or acting on their own. And then we're going to also ask that you comply with the operational directions that may come through the amateur radio network or the commercial radio system, and even in some cases by cellular phone in the cases where we can't reach you. It has happened. A lot of the buses and vans don't necessarily have the best equipment to mount antennas or mag mount antennas, or sometimes people don't have mobile radios, so it can get a little hairy depending on where you are in the course. It's a large course and it's hard to get coverage everywhere. In general, make sure to keep a listening watch on the transportation net channel that you're assigned. We will try and match operators to the best channel frequency that covers their portion of the loop with the best strength. It may not be perfect, we understand that, but make sure to keep an eye or an ear on that portion of your radio. We want to inform net control when you're approaching and departing all the stops. This gives us a very good idea of where the buses are in the loop. If they're bunching up, we can hold buses, or if they're not making it to certain stops. We can identify that early and make sure we get that. We need to keep track of the number of runners that you've picked up or been unable to pick up. We need to make sure that everyone's flowing. We can't have a stack of large amount of runners at a medical tent. We don't want any pileups. The whole idea is to operate smoothly, a normal, regular bus transportation system. We don't want to sit there waiting for people in most cases. We want to make sure that they just keep rotating and flowing to all the stations. And it's also a good idea to have a good idea of where your ETA or your how far away you are from the next stop and your relative position. So if net control loses your GPS tracker, they're not perfect, we can have a good idea of where you are and where you're moving through the course. These statistics also are, like Jim was talking about, are also important for not only immediate bus relocation. If there starts to become a pile of runners at certain medical stations, we can handle those, and for planning for next year to make sure that our loops and our models are all flowing correctly and working optimally. As you can see here, there are 4 loops, 4 rendezvous points. This is the A loop, and so this consists of 6 stops. As you can see there, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 8, and then the Hampton Inn. So what you'll have is you'll have the sweep buses will run these loops, and they'll start off at 1 and go through all these stations, stop off at the Hampton Inn, which helps them clear their smaller bus of all the runners, and then they will continue on to B4 and B8, and then back to Hampton Inn. It is important that the buses stop twice at Hampton Inn in the full cycle, because otherwise the bus gets full and we can't transport as many people as possible. Some bus stops are on the opposite side of the course in the medical tent. This is another thing where the ETA comes into play and is very important, because if we have a heads up that you're arriving, we can get runners and other people who can't sit away from the medical tent there and ready for the bus and ready for pickup. It helps facilitate the whole process. Complete both halves of every loop. That's very important. Don't just run this upper half or run this lower half. It happens. Try to be aware of the fact that you're on this whole loop and you cover all of it. We will primarily use amateur radio to communicate, but we also have the commercial radios, the DC turbo radios that were mentioned earlier. They will be connected with transaction. We also have cell phones and carrier pigeons. We don't prefer that method. Birds are very unreliable, and we can't get them to go exactly where we want all the time. Ideally, mag mount antennas in this case, if you're in this role, are very helpful. We have noticed that some of the vans sometimes have fiberglass roofs, cookie sheets, duct tape, get the job done. It can be made to work. And that concludes my segment.